All right, traders, welcome to today's recap. This is Christian from Hertz Tribeca Trade Group, and it is Friday, July 30th. So, end of week, end of month as well. We'll go over a little bit of the performance for the week, performance for the month here. Everything that we're going through here is for information purposes only, not giving out any advice or recommendations. Everything that we're talking about here is for education purposes only. And if the screen looks a little bit blurry to you, it is because the YouTube video has not rendered high def. They take a long time to do it for my settings, so it is what it is. So performance for today, the Qs rebounded a little bit here. I'll blow this up a little bit because I know it's small font. Even if it's not blurry, you'll probably have a difficult time reading it. But SPY finished down. SPY and Qs, IWM, they all finished down. Some of them rebounded a little bit. IWM did not. IWM actually finished a little bit lower to finish down about 60 basis points. But all of these were very close. All the major indices very close to one another. The microcaps were down a little bit more. Bonds were up a bit. The VIX was up for the day, although coming in from where it opened. And in terms of sector performance, the semis were a bright spot, I thought, today. They held in there. AMD continues to move higher, and a number of we can go through a couple of those names that acted well, but a lot of earnings reactions, and in my opinion, I say this a lot. I probably say it too much, but because I run a trading room and I'm here every day, no matter what. But weeks like this, I think are, and you could do this for next week too, because it is the summertime. But it's better to be like sitting on the beach, maybe with your phone and going over some of these earnings reports after the close. It's always these weeks where they pack them all in one. I mean, the one good thing is that you get through it rather quickly, but it's a mess. It's a mess to try to figure out what names are. There's so many names that are reporting on a day-to-day basis. It's tough to figure out which ones are going to be runners versus which ones are going to kind of go up and then sink and give back the gains. And it's tough, right? And so we'll see if this kind of helps us kind of get through, being that we got a chunk of earnings out of the way. We still have a lot of reports next week, and we're going to be hearing about a lot of different Fed speakers. So I don't think it gets a ton easier from here, but I'm glad that we're done with the Fed meeting, and we're done with all these earnings reports, and we can kind of look for some. The silver lining here is that there will be, as we kind of talk about before we get into earnings season, is that there will be some names that are going to come out and they're going to have some good trading opportunities to them. So that's the bright spot of getting out of earnings season and finding some new names possibly that might be able to rally a bit and come up with a game plan in terms of those names that really beat earnings handily. Those will be trading opportunities for the next quarter, right? A lot of what we look at is names that gap up on earnings, consolidate, move higher, and consolidate and move higher. So that's the plan for a number of names, and we'll be seeing that more next week as well. So again, it's a great time to try to sit on your hands. I know that's easier said than done. Because it's tough to just basically just sit and watch the screens and not participate. But I always find these weeks very tricky. And then today was month end too, which these month ends have been not good trading. I've lost money, I think, on which I lost money today, but I lose money on these end of month trading days, probably. So we've had 7 of them so far. I probably have lost money five out of the last 7 end of month days, just because I'm holding positions. I also find that the market makers just really punish any option positions that you're holding. Like, even if the stock isn't going down, they just hammer the premium on the last trading day of the month. So anyway, I always get the negative stuff out of the way first. But yeah, so that's kind of what we had. The best performing group was the solar group. There's a couple bright spots in here, and then medical devices again strong in terms of just performance for the day. Those were your best performers. But yeah, if you look at the semi ETF, even though I see a number of names that are very choppy in this group, but if you look at the best performers for the day in the SMH ETF, CLAC was the best one, right? That did have good earnings. So again, like a mixed bag in terms of names that reported. AMD, of course, had some follow through, up to almost 107 today. So nice follow through there, and you do have a breakout, in AMD. So that's exciting, right? That's a good thing, right? And this AMD, it's funny because I mentioned when people tweet stuff at me, but I mentioned the first day on earnings day. I said, wow, maybe this AMD starts to really get interesting here. And, someone said, and this was this day, right? And I think, again, there's some inexperienced, there's a lot of inexperienced traders out there. But one of the things that I look for is when a name will actually start to do something like this. That was when the stock was at 95, 96, right? It's up almost another 10% from there, right? So that's what I mean in terms of interesting. Once a name comes out with results that were better than what the street was expecting, and a name that's, AMD has been typically a difficult name on earnings day, right? I could bring up the history just to show you. So when the expectations are a bit low, right? That's when things can kind of get interesting. You could see how many negative quarters they've had, right, where the price action is not particularly good. So this is different, right? So that's why respecting these breakouts once they happen, because that is where things get fun to me, right? Trading in a range and so forth. But once a name has been in a range for a while, that's when it gets fun. That's what happened with Nvidia too. Nvidia is quietly kind of consolidating here. But I said the same thing, and I got heckled on Twitter too. I said once this thing broke out, people were like, "Well, isn't that enough? That's a big move." Well, no. That you have to realize, how long this base was for Nvidia. So it's still doing pretty well. It's kind of hit the pause button for now, but those are a couple names. Lam Research also had a nice day today after they kind of turned it around. This will be a name to watch next week, right? This will be one to watch next week. It's been sideways for a while, and it shook off that earnings report yesterday. I don't know if there's anything really bad in the earnings report, but it had an initial bad reaction. Cadence is another name too. This is a name that I actually tried to trade this name about a month ago and just didn't stick with it. And this name has just continued to grind and outperform very well. FTNT ended up just down a little bit. Amazing, some of these names, right, that have been in these very strong trends. Look at the turnaround. Now, I don't know how much shares traded down here, but this was a nice turnaround for Fortinet. Best name in cyberspace that nobody ever talks about. But look at the trend that's happening in this thing. And, again, sometimes I get a little bit nervous with earnings. JCI actually had a good one, too. This was a name that I was holding for a long while and trimmed yesterday. I exited my swing in this one yesterday just because, again, earnings. But this thing just, followed through very nicely today. Right? We saw that in a couple other things, too. Blackstone, when they reported earnings, they've actually been stellar since that name has reported earnings. A couple names that I'm watching for next week is UNH. Again, this tape is getting a little bit more conservative, I think. I could be misreading here, but when we look at the best performers for the week, it was not tech. This is the performance for the week. SPY finished down just fractionally, down about 0.5%. Diamonds the same. Small caps actually outperformed. The Qs were down 1%. Part of that coming for tomorrow. Emerging markets were down, obviously by China, and bonds and gold were both up for the week. And you could see value did outperform. Not a huge, outperformance, but they did. Value did finish positive for the week. Metals and mining were sorry, I can't speak. It's, like I said, it's been a long week, a lot of information. But metals and mining were your best performing sector. We did see some call buying in that one, along with things like Nucor and STLD. Steel was up 4.8%. Blockchain stocks were up 3.8%. Materials were up 2.7%. So again, some different names. Nice to see, solar. Like I mentioned, solar was one of the best names. This ENPH quietly, in the massive earnings reports this week, made a nice little move, and could be one to watch for next week. All right. The other one that I always like to watch too is this SEDG, but I think ENPH looks a little bit better. All right, your home builders. Remember, your home builders were your best performing sector last week. They were up another 1.9%. So that's pretty solid, following up what they did last week. When we flip to the negative names, your transports, your internet names, got hit hard. Remember, put it in perspective. Look at what the internet names did over the last month. They did their traditional run into earnings. I say it till I'm blue in the face every earnings cycle, but if you look to see what this group did, it made a really nice run over the last couple months in the internet names. So again, they do that, especially the FANG names, the bigger tech. They love to end up being buy the rumor, sell the news. In terms of earnings, they love to run into earnings reports, and then get sometimes beaten up, or like Amazon did today. There's always usually one in the group. Well, this time around it was Amazon. What did this thing fall? 7.5% today. So basically back in the range. I like what I was listening. I don't listen to CNBC every day, but I did have them on the halftime show, and Josh Brown mentioned that this is no longer a breakout trade. I agree. That trade is over with in Amazon, and now you could see the area for me was above 35.15. So now it kind of goes back to, like, in your IRA or your 401k, probably a good company to own for the long term. But from a trading aspect, I not so much now. For me, anyway, for being a trend trader, I was looking for this thing, and I thought it was very cute that this thing held on to the top of value last week, but not so good. So back into the range for this one. So again, if a name is giving you a hard time in trading, whether it's because of earnings or just because it's not performing well, try not to be stubborn. We talked about that in yesterday's video, and move on to another name. There are so many other names out there. That's why I always are critical of the meme stocks, because I see the same names. Like, I get a report from Bloomberg every day that mentions the names that are mentioned, the top names that are mentioned, and every day for like the last 2 months, it's the same name. I'm not going to mention the name, because if I mention the name, I get a whole bunch of hate mail, or people attack me on Twitter. But you know what name it is. And, there's so many other names out there. And I get frustrated too when I see people, they can only mention the same stocks, right? The more that you could kind of get away, be as flexible as possible, and realize when something changes in a stock, that's your advantage, right? To be able to change your mind as the environment changes. So in any event, this is an example for me. I won't be looking at this one the way I did over the last 3 or 4 weeks once this thing broke out. But it's unfortunate that the trading opportunity kind of goes away, but it is what it is. There will be a lot of other names, right? We have a whole universe of names to look at. So just to kind of wrap this up for the week, Chinese internet names, even though they bounced a bit, still down 8.5% for the week. Transports were down. Consumer discretionary was down, but mostly that's because of Amazon, huge weight in that ETF. Retail was down 1%. Let's just glance over these indices right? Let's move off the weekly chart and let's get to the Qs. Digesting perfectly normal here, back into the 20-day moving average. So who knows, might set up a trading opportunity. I like that, move back into the 20-day moving average. S&P went sideways for the whole week. I put out some charts as I try to help people who don't know what the MarketWebs are, but once again, top of value worked really well here, and sideways for the week, just down for the week slightly. Right, and then IWM, which is the wild card right now, also outperformed, but really couldn't get going too much. Let me just bring up the Russell futures. That price action, if you let Thinkorswim adjust here, you will realize that this stayed in value basically for the whole month. Got a little bit outside of value, but stalled. All right, and this will be an interesting one again to watch. Completely sideways, right? Over the last, not a lot of trading opportunities to me, unless we're exploring one side of the range. We don't want to break out. We don't want to break down, right? And then the other ETF that I look at a lot of times is the RSP, right? We talked about that in yesterday's video. Broke out yesterday, down 27 basis points today. That's not bad on an end of month. So that's the performance for the week. If you're wondering how we did for the month, how the averages did for the month, the S&P, you could go. I just have this month's performance 630 to 730, and on the right of your screen, I'll give you the net change. So S&P was up 2.4% for the month. Not a bad, locks in, another strong month, right? Q's up 2.9% for the month. And you're going to see IWM was the redheaded stepchild, down 3.6% for the month. So again, just different performance. That IWM led to that, what everybody called weak market breadth. A lot of that happening in the small caps, and you can see by that performance. All right, so that's kind of a wrap for the month. A lot to improve on for me for next month. Probably just again. I will send out a video for members Sunday. That'll be probably in the macro video, just talking about performance for the month. Positive month, but nothing to jump up and down over for this month. Overall, I know some of the things that plagued me a little bit. I was just kind of glancing at my month's performance and names that I did well and names that I did not. Bad timing in a couple trades, but I would say overall just over trading a little bit, trying to do too much, right? And I think that's one of the things that we're always battling with, right? Over trading. We want to be in there every day. I don't take off a lot of days, but in reality, in regard to being in there every day, sometimes just sitting it out a little bit. Like today, for example, or this week, I mentioned earnings week is always difficult to me. So, don't be afraid to do that a little bit, especially in the summertime when it's nice out. Again, I run a trading room, so it shows you like, usually people who run trading rooms are not, are always talking about the winners and what they did for the day and how great it was. But I really like, you have to realize I play the long game here. And my goal is to just consistently crank out winning months, positive months. Recognize when the market is kind of difficult and sit back, and be number one, a risk manager, right? And I have goals for this year, but we'll see if we can get there. We're a little bit past the halfway point for the year. And this has been a challenging year, even though the indices have, how much are we up right now in terms of SPY? I was going to guess 17-18%, is that right? Somewhere in there. Yeah, we're up 18.6% for the year. Isn't that amazing? Right. So it's not, sometimes the simplest thing, holding SPY, but up 18.6% for the year. Now, thankfully, my performance is better than that year to date, but it's certainly has not been, I have not had, 30-40% up months. These months this year have been up 5%, up 6%, that type of thing. So, we do what the market gives us, and we kind of go from there. So, I will say this, again, to try to be a little bit more positive. What I would look for next month, just to be nimble. I was talking about this earlier in the TTG Q&A session, look ahead of the weekend. But the more nimble that you can be in this market, right, and holding less positions in your trading account, I have found that that's where I've excelled in this market, is to be really kind of quick, and to try to limit as many option positions that I have on. Every time I seem to put on an option position, it seems to be just a work in progress. Stock is a little bit better, but the other thing in this market, you cannot chase, right? You have to be patient, wait for some opportunities, and then kind of strike. But chasing in this market has not been something to do over the last 4 months or so. All right, guys, I'll leave it there. Have a great weekend, everybody, and we'll look forward to, we'll put together, as usual, a nice watch list for this week coming up, and we'll go from there. Have a great weekend, everybody.